right, this is our first set of interviews with Mom, Iola Burr Creamer, and today we're sitting outside the front of the Jefferson Township School on Hussey Road, just right outside of Bowersville. Yesterday we went to the time capsule opening of the school, and Mom was one of the speakers. So today we wanted to talk a little bit more about her personal recollections of being here all 12 years of school. So the first question, Mom, is when you started school in 1925, how many students were in your class?
Well, there were 32 in my room, but I'm not sure how many were first graders, but they had split classes at that time, and there was probably half of the second grade class was in our room. And then the next year, when we were in the second grade, I guess there was some third grade in with us. They did that for lots of years, and then it was also done in the fourth and fifth grade, and I guess they just got by without two extra teachers when they had to split classes that way, because times were hard back then. Depression was coming on, so I mean they were preserving every penny taxpayers was paying.
Yeah, I think the statistic we saw yesterday was that they started with 9 teachers in this building. Can you point out which room was your first grade room? Was it here in the front?
The one right there over where they took the time capsule out below it.
Okay, all right. Very good, very good. Okay, so now all of your siblings attended school here. Uncle Forrest, being your older brother, he got into a bit of trouble in 1926 here at this school. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, in the spring of the year, when he was a junior, there was a lot of competition between them and the seniors over their class colors. Well, they used crepe paper and cut some streamers, and so one day they were trying to see who could get their class colors to fly the highest, and I guess they even somebody had put some up on the flagpole, and somebody greased the flagpole, so they were permanent there. On the back part over what was then the auditorium, there was a trap door up in the high school hallway that led out to the roof, and so we were out on the playground. That would have been when I was in the first grade. And we looked up at noon, and here was all these boys and some girls out there on top of that tile roof, trying to see who could get their class colors the highest. Well, in all of doing that, they had broken some tile. And so my dad had to pay some money to help replace those tile because Forrest was on the roof. Lawrence Baker, who later years was my brother-in-law, he had some of his own money, so his parents never found out that he was up there and got into trouble.
Okay, can you describe for us your typical last day of the school year?
Well, first thing in the morning, I guess, was the, let's see, it would have been 6th grade. No, 8th grade. It would have been the 8th grade graduation, and then after that was over, then we had some races right out here on these lawns.
Okay.
And I guess each class had so many kids to race. Well, one year I won the race, and I had a dollar bill, which was a lot of money back in those days. And I never really remembered thinking too much about it. But years later, when Mary was working at Fayette Memorial Hospital, as she was the outpatient nurse, and she had this lady come in for some surgery. Well, her sister happened to be with her. Well, this sister asked Mary, "Have you always lived around Fayette County?" Mary said, "No, I was raised around Bowersville." She said, "Well, I had a good friend around Bowersville. Her name was Iola Burr." And Mary said, well, that was my mom. So then she proceeded to tell Mary about this race. She said, I told my mom before I got on the bus that morning that I was going to win the race and I'd have $1. But she said, your mom beat me.
That's a great story. Okay, now how did you get your school books for school?
Well, we had to furnish our own. And Morning Store downtown had the privilege, I read that in the board meeting records, that they were responsible for ordering all the books for the schools, and that's where you had to go to buy your books and your workbooks. But back then, we always had a half a day of school on Labor Day. Buses ran. Kids all came to school. You got all your list of what books and workbooks you needed, and they expected you to have them the next day.
Yeah.
Then some years, though, if you knew some kids a grade ahead of you, you could buy their book to save a little money, and that was done a lot too.
Didn't you say you had a book that had somebody else's name in that
Yes,
you recognized?
I had one. It was a geometry book, and it had Arthur Faulkner's name in it, and he had graduated 2 years ahead of me.
Okay, all right. All right, well, go ahead and describe your typical day of school. Like, what time did you have to get here,
Well, the buses ran, and school took up at 9 o'clock, and then we had run till 12 o'clock, and but there was a recess somewhere, 15-minute recess in that time. But at noon, everybody back then packed their lunches because that was before cafeteria time.
Yeah.
And everybody was out, from seniors to first graders, was all out at this 1 hour at noon. And in nice weather, if the kids were out on the playground, about 10 minutes till 1, the bell that was up here in the belfry was rung, and we knew we had about 10 minutes to get into the room for school to take up. Then in the afternoon, we had another about 15-20 minute recess, and then at 4 o'clock school was over.
So when they got cold water in the school, then they did start serving lunches?
Shortly around that time, I think, but it was pretty primitive. They had served a lot of hot dog sandwiches, peanut butter sandwiches with chili. It was not much, but it cost you 10 cents. And they had, they were little orange-colored tickets that you could buy for the week if you wanted all week, and you could pay your 50 cents, I guess, and get your tickets. But remember, this was hard times,
Right.
and a lot of people still brought their lunches.
Yeah, so what happened when school was ending and you were ready to be dismissed?
Well, in our room, the teacher lined the kids up in a line, and we marched out of our room down to the middle hall here, and then they started going out with first grade, and they came 2 lines down the walks here. But there was a boy that stood back right in there, and we marched to the beat of a drum.
He was a drummer.
It was one of the Richardson boys, Donald Richardson, when I was in school.
Okay.
And Mr. DeVoe, the superintendent, stood right there to that post with his back to the post, and he was watching every kid, and you marched along here. Well, I was already on the bus, but this boy rode my bus, and the next thing we knew, I don't know what he had done, but he'd done something, and Mr. DeVoe jerked him out of line and brought him into the front of the bus, and they were still scuffling when they got inside the bus. But I don't know what he had done. He was 2 grades ahead of me.
Yeah, there was enough to scare you.
Yeah, it was scary.
Yeah. Did you get a spring break?
No, we had at Thanksgiving, we had Thanksgiving Day and the Friday after, and we had 1 week at Christmas. That was it.
Yeah. So, but then you were out of school by when?
About the first, second week in May, usually.
Okay. But what happened that unusual year?
Oh, there was one year, I think I was about in the fourth or fifth grade. In April, they ran out of money. School ended. Everybody passed. And they didn't have enough money to pay the teachers or to pay the bus drivers, so school ended. But started in the fall again. Just remember, it was just taxpayer money.
Right. Tell us about the Farmers Institute.
The Farmers Institute was held every year in February, probably about the second week in February. And just remember, this was a farming community. Most parents were farmers, and they met in the gymnasium, the auditorium gymnasium, and it lasted about 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and we kids were allowed to go down to some stations. I guess they picked what ones was appropriate for us to watch. But they had, in the girls' basement, they had where a table set up where ladies had baked pies, cakes, and breads, and they were judged first, if you got a red ribbon or a blue ribbon or yellow ribbon. And then in the boys' basement, there was tables set up, and the men, the farmers, brought in corn ears and some of their grain, and it was judged, and they got the same premiums. And that was the only time that the girls were ever allowed in the boys' basement, or the boys allowed in the girls' basement, that we could go see what was on display.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Did you have a PTA?
Yes, they had that, and it was run by the bus routes, is how they termed that. And each bus route was responsible each year to put on some kind of a program that everybody was open to the public. And I remember one year, I think this was when Mom was involved, that I don't remember a whole lot about it, but these men and women all had baby bonnets on, and they stuck their heads through the curtains. It was kind of a
comedy of some kind.
Yes. And then one year they had a ciphering match, and one lady beat our superintendent.
Now, a lot of people aren't going to know what ciphering is.
Well, it was in arithmetic, I think, and I guess they were timed probably, how long it took them to, I don't know whether it was adding.
So they just gave them a problem, and they had to do it in their head.
No, I think they had blackboard in front of each one. But she beat the superintendent. It was just, everybody kind of got a little
chuckle about that.
Yes.
I bet he was embarrassed.
She had been a former school teacher, though.
Oh, wow, then she had a little, yeah. Today there's no prayer allowed in school, yet you had chapel services.
Every Monday morning. That was the first thing after school took up, that we all marched. We all marched. All the kids marched back then. You just didn't run. You walked orderly. And we went down the stairway that led down into the gymnasium. And at that time, there were 4 churches here in Bowersville. And then there was one in our school district out at Grassy Run. That was a Quaker church. And so that preacher was included in the group. And so that was 5 preachers. So every fifth Monday, they had a turn. They took a turn and had chapel and read their scripture and talked a little bit.
Okay. Do you want to get a drink?
And one man was one preacher, the one from the Quaker church, was actually blind, but his wife would bring him in by the arm and take him to where he belonged, and then she would sit down and then she would take him out. But it was interesting. And then also when I was up in the what we called it, it was used as a study hall, but it was also the homeroom for the freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. That every morning before school took up, somebody read from the Bible before everybody. They took turns, and
Yeah.
and that was great.
Now, music and musicians run in the Burr family. So, can you tell us how you were first introduced to music in school?
It was in the 6th grade. Elizabeth Ankeny was our music teacher, and all of us in the class had a harmonica, and she taught us how to play America. And then, if you want to know about our school music teachers, my first grade was Mr. Copsey, and he kind of had a little humpback, but he taught us to sing I Had a Little Pony. Its name was Dapple Gray.
Yeah.
I lent it to a lady.
So you still know it?
Yeah. And the 2nd grade, then Mr. Downing, who was a teacher principal, and he had a violin, and so he would come in and we sang with songs with his violin. And then after Elizabeth Ankeny was only here maybe a couple years, then they hired Donna Claire Shealy, and she was a music teacher and band director clear through till I was out of school.
But did you play? You didn't play a
I
musical
never played an
instrument, did you?
instrument, no.
Okay.
I didn't get the burr.
You didn't get that music gene?
No.
Did you play sports?
Yes, I played basketball and in my last 2 years, and it was good. The girls back then played half court. I was a center and a forward, and so then you had 2 other forwards, and then the same team had the same on the other end, and then your team had the guards. And so, but we were only allowed to take 1 dribble when the ball was passed to you. 1 dribble was all. And if you was close enough, you tried to shoot, but if you wasn't, you passed it off to somebody else. But it was a lot of fun.
Did you win a lot of games?
Oh, I guess we won quite a few. We never got to go to the tournament, but we had a lot of fun.
So tell us about your, did you cause a lot of fouls?
No, I never had a foul. I had 1 foul, and I've always said it wasn't my fault. Martha though was a guard on the other end, and Martha had several fouls, I'm pretty sure, and she said she bloodied one girl's nose one time.
What teams did you play?
We just played county teams. It was a big Jamestown, Silver Creek, Ross, Cedarville, Yellow Springs, Beaver Creek, Bellbrook, and Spring Valley.
That's quite a few games.
At Jamestown, did not have a gymnasium at that time, so we played up in that, there was a manufacturing building below it, and we played Jamestown the first year up there, and the second year they had just built their new building, and we, in January, we played them, and the night after the game when we were in the dressing room, the lights went off, and we thought, well, that's strange, brand new building and the lights went off, so we had to finish dressing in the dark.
So when you went to your freshman year, you moved up to the upper floors of the school building,
we'd
right?
been up there because 7th and 8th grade.
7th and 8th were already up there. Okay,
Yeah.
but there was some initiation to become a
And
freshman.
freshmen, yeah, they initiated when you was a freshman. And
So like what kind of things?
well, they'd have the last period. They would everybody would go down to the auditorium, little kids, everybody, and then they made us dress in funny clothes, and then we had to come down there, march down there, and then they made us sit on the floor. And then after school was out, we had to go cut the sticks for the wiener roast that night. And then after the wiener roast was over, then we came back into the gymnasium, and we each had to push a potato across the gymnasium floor with our nose.
Yeah, I'd never heard that before. Okay, tell us about any proms, formals, banquets, those kinds of...
Well, we called them junior-senior banquets back then. They were not proms.
Okay.
And my mom had made my dress. It was a pink organdy dress with ruffles. and we was having our meal here at the school. The mothers was cooking it, and they set the tables up in the lower hall. But that afternoon, I did run track, and that afternoon, Walter Linton, who was also my basketball coach, was our track coach, and we went to Beaver Creek to have our track meet. And he had driven his dad's car that day, but when we came back to his car, somehow a window was broken or cracked. And he said, well, I can't take my dad's car home like this. So somewhere between Beaver Creek and Xenia, there was a junkyard, and he stopped at the junkyard and went in and found a window that would fit. And so then we stopped in Xenia to the garage there. It was where Lang's was in later years. And they put the window in. Well, here was all of us girls supposed to be getting ready for our prom or banquet. And so, but he finally got us home. Well, at that time, Mom had a cook stove in the kitchen and it had a fire in it. So before she left at noon, she'd put water on in the wash boiler so I'd have some warm water to clean up with. So I guess I just washed up good and combed my hair and put a pin or two in it, and my dad brought me up to school here. And then after we ate, then we all went to Wilmington to Murphy Theater. I don't remember what the movie was, but Walter Linton again took a carload of girls. And none of the girls or boys in my class had dates, but there was the senior boys. There were 3 of them. They went to Jamestown and found 3 girls to take. And on their way, taking the girls back to Jamestown, up on 72, where the new cemetery, or the cemetery is now, down in one corner, it was always a low spot, and it had water in it. Well, I don't know what happened, but whoever was driving lost control in the car, and they all ended up upset in that water. So we all got a good laugh about that because they was taking their Jamestown girls home.
Instead of the Bowersville girls. Okay, well, describe your graduating class.
Well, there were 17 in my class. And there was 4 of us that had actually started to school together in the first grade that had gone all 12 years together, and that was Margie Robinson, Wilma Linton, Wayne Brads, and myself. And so then I was salutatorian in my class that year. Margie Franklin was valedictorian, and she gave the class prophecy, and so I gave the class history, and Walter Linton was our advisor, and he kind of helped me to give me some ideas of what to base it on. And I don't know, it's something about, we were flying in a plane, and each year you threw out a ballast and all, but I had to learn this.
You didn't read it?
I had no papers in front of me, not even a stand or anything in front of me. I stood there with my hands down to my side and told my story. And my brother, Forrest, happened to be there that night, and he made the statement to the rest of them. When I got to about the 5th grade, he said, well, I think she'll make it now.
And what year was that?
1937.
1937, okay. Well, we're sitting in front of this building that's going to be demolished. So how do you feel about that after looking at it?
Well, I believe it has served its purpose. It was a great place, and I would rather see it torn down than see it just sit here and keep deteriorating. And Richard would have his land back to farm. It would be back like it was, the land when the school board purchased it.
from the Vannemans, right?
From the Vannemans.
That's what we figured out. So
I think it served its purpose. It's been good to everybody that ever was involved with it. But
yeah, were you surprised how many people were at the time capsule opening?
no, I thought there was a lot of people that were interested, people that were not even Bowersville natives, really, and never attended school here were there. I think it was just something interesting to everyone.
Yeah, yeah. You've never been to a time capsule opening in
No.
your 104 years
No.
before, have you?
No, never.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's something.
But
most
that
of us
right over
won't.
there was where it was, the corner
Yeah,
store.
you can.
And,
really get
and
a-
as many years as I was here at school, because see, they didn't allow us to play out here. I don't know that I ever even saw that it said Cornerstone on it, because we weren't allowed on the front. We played at the back of the school was all where the playground was. They had swings, teeter-totters, slides. One year they had, or a few years they had out a little bit of ways from there, they had what they called the Johnnies, and they were chains fastened to a pole and had a place where you could get a hold of them.
a bar.
And you would go around, and somebody would wrap the chain, and then you'd start running. But it was dangerous because every once in a while a kid would stop, drop their, and that iron was running with no control, and it would hit somebody. If somebody got hit in the head, so they finally
It didn't last very long.
took it away.
Yeah, that was probably
It was
before
dangerous.
merry-go-rounds.
Yeah, I think later maybe they might have put up one of them little merry-go-rounds, but all was there. When I was there was teeter-totters and slides and swings at the back, but that
Yeah.
thing was out there a little farther.
So when the bell would ring and recess was going to be over, so did you all go get a drink of water or before you
Well,
went in, or?
Yeah, there was no water in the building. There's two wells at the back, one on the west side, one on the east side that had pumps, and you were expected to. We had little collapsible tin cups. Every child was supposed to have one of them with them to use to drink, but there were cups or tin cups hanging at the well.
But were your cups inside? Wouldn't your cups have been in the cloakroom with your
No,
stuff?
you had them in your desk. We
Oh,
had
in your
desks with.
desk. So
We
you-
had the desk with under where the books and everything went underneath, and the desks were all fastened together in rows.
Yeah.
I think though some years they were fastened down to the floor, and those floors were always oiled. The room had a smell of its own because it was of that oil. I think that was to keep the dust down.
Yeah. Coal-fired furnace, right?
Yeah, coal fire.
And then if you got too hot, did they open the windows?
Well, in the spring, yeah, we would have the windows open, and there was always in each room there was a pencil sharpener in one of the windows. That if you
And
needed to sharpen your
blackboards
around,
blackboards.
and a cloakroom to the back where we could hang our coats, and of course and I had a dinner bucket for years, and that's where you would just set your dinner bucket in there on the floor, and lunchtime we'd go get it. But when the cafeteria actually started, you had to go down to the cafeteria, get your plate, carry it back to your room. You ate at your desk, and then they had, a big tub like sitting outside of each room for you to put your dirty dishes in. But at that time, see, the high school, then you had to walk 2 flights of stairs to carry your food. Well, by the time you'd probably get there, your food had cooled off quite a bit. But that was the way it was. They did not have tables down in the
There was not really a cafeteria.
no, it was just a kitchen that you walked up to a window and picked up your plate.
Okay.
And those ladies down there, it was hard for them because at the beginning there was no water in there. They had to carry water from the wells outside, and to heat, to wash dishes or cooking anything they needed. So it was hard back in those days.
Yeah, yeah. So what was a typical school lunch that you packed? What did you take
What I
in
packed,
your lunch?
well, a lot of times, of course, my mom baked bread all the time. We never had, as we called it, baker's bread. And of course, being on the farm, we butchered, and lots of days I had homemade bread with a ham sandwich. And Lois Arthur was in my grade. She was the Methodist preacher's daughter, and her and I traded lunches lots of days because she had, as we called it, baker's bread and bologna. Well, that was a treat to me, and my homemade bread and ham was a treat to her. So we traded lunches quite frequently.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, to wrap this up, can you name every teacher that you had in elementary, starting with first grade?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was, when the school year started, she was Miss Villa. We called her Miss Villa, and she was Miss Villa Glass. But sometime during that year, she got married. She married Alfred Webb, and of course that ended her teaching career because back at that time they did not allow married women to teach school. If you got married, you were done. Second grade, it was Irma Glass. Third grade, it was Gladys Bales. Fourth grade, it was fourth and fifth grade, it was Lucille Gehringer, because that was one of the split years. And sixth grade was Robert Ross. And then, of course, up in high school, let's see, they had just hired that year that we moved upstairs, Miss Vance, but she was only here a couple years. She was a home ec teacher. And then the next they hired Dorothy Steele to come. And Dorothy Steele was also our chaperone for the girls' basketball team because Walter Litton was we had a man coach, and she would go with us on the bus everywhere we went.
Yeah, it sounds like Walter Linton was probably the most influential teacher that you had spent time with.
He was good. He was great.
Yeah. And the superintendent when you graduated?
The first year I started to school, the superintendent was Mr. Milner, and I'm almost positive he was the one that walked with a crutch. I don't know, with crutches. I don't know just exactly what his problem was. And then the second year is when Chester DeVoe came as our superintendent. And the night of our graduation, he told the people, he said, I feel like I'm graduating with this class because he was retiring. So he was with us 11 years, and he retired.